So, welcome to Rare Givers. My name's Crystal Barrett O'Loughlin, and I'm the founder and CEO of an organization that provides emotional support services for caregivers and patients and healthcare professionals, and really all those affected by rare and chronic conditions. And I'm so excited to be able to do this interview and this conversation and introduce Sam Humphrey. If you have ever seen anything about Sam Humphrey, you would know he's an actor from an amazing film called The Greatest Showman. And he would, what I would say is become a friend. Just in our last few conversations, I've gotten to know you, Sam. So please introduce yourself and say a few words to those listening.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute honor and privilege to be able to talk with you and also, over the last several weeks of building our friendship and our relationship. And to my surprise, to find out that I was out of the blue nominated for your Rare Givers 100 program. Was quite a surprise to me because I don't know whether the things that I do and my advocacy work and everything, whether or not it gets noticed or whether people are paying attention to anything I have to say. As you said, I am an actor, first and foremost, but I dabble in writing. I dabble in creating my brand, The Little Guy. I dabble in advocating for mental health, rare diseases. Um, Basically, anyone who sort of feels like, they're an underdog or the little guy and is facing challenges or obstacles, whatever that might be. And I really believe that we can all help each other and help each other to, rise above all the challenges that we're facing because ultimately life is about thriving and not just surviving. And so I think what you're doing and what a lot of the other organizations that I partner with and work with are doing is, an incredible thing for culture and society. And that's why I, partner and work with all of them.
That's so fantastic, Sam. Well, yes, I'm not surprised you were surprised, but let's talk about the Rare Givers 100. So, the Rare Givers 100 was actually a program that we started with Microsoft Corporation. It was an idea that I had as the leader of Rare Givers, but I asked our technology friends at Microsoft, how could we actually identify the world's 100 most vocal change makers in rare and chronic disease. And so they used artificial intelligence, what we call AI for good, to
Mhm.
scan all of the social posts, scan articles that had been published, anything that had a digital footprint. And we got this amazing list, curated list back of leaders around the world. And then we invited our community to actually nominate individuals as well. And through a big complicated process, narrowed the list to 100. So it was really your advocacy and your willingness to be vocal and be talking about your experience, living a medical life, but also against a backdrop of just incredible success and good fortune and just hard work as an actor. And so maybe you could talk about that. Talk about, how does success factor in on your life, and what are the high points and the low points of being like an amazing celebrity that you are?
Yeah, of course. So as you mentioned, living a medical life and then also contrasting that with, the incredible success that I've been very fortunate and blessed to have. It's been very interesting because obviously, I became an actor, or I started my acting journey when I was very young. I always had the dream of being an actor from, age 5. And then really from 8 years old was when like I really knew like inside my bones that I wanted to become an actor, and that was when I actually saw Hugh Jackman on the big screen for the first time, and that was when I was like, I want to be like that guy. At first, it was more or less this character that I'd seen, and I think when I think back to it, like nowadays, is the character that he portrayed was more about like strength and not letting like the outside world be able to like affect you, because anyone who doesn't really know that much about his character Wolverine, he was made of this unbreakable and unpenetrable steel adamantium skeleton, and basically it couldn't be like if he got injured or he got hurt, he would just heal instantly. So he couldn't like die, but pretty much he couldn't die. And so I think when I saw that, for me, someone who's like a little person and has all these different challenges and things, I just wanted to feel that sense of not being able to get hurt or not being able to have vulnerabilities or things like that. And so I really resonated with that character, and I just didn't want to. I didn't want the outside world to be able to hurt me. Um, and then obviously I realized I was a character. So then I looked up Hugh Jackman, and then he really inspired me to get into acting, and that kind of became a little bit of a therapy for me growing up, because I was able to step into these different roles and these different characters that were outside of who I was, outside of who Sam Humphrey was. So I didn't have to wear the shoes of, struggling with mental health, struggling with my medical challenges, struggling with being a little person. I didn't have to wear everything that I was for, just a tiny little moment that I was portraying another character. And then I realized that I really enjoyed stepping into the shoes of another character, another role. And then obviously step forward to Greatest Showman. I really stepped into the role of Tom Thumb, and his real name was Charles Stratton. And I didn't know it at the time when I landed the role. It was more when I was on set that I realized his life and my life were really a lot of the same things. I mean, obviously, now my parents never locked me up in a bedroom and hid me away from the world. But I think on a more emotional and mental and even spiritual level, I did that myself. Like I never allowed myself to be seen by the world. Like I was mental health, my own independence, and protect everything that I was, and I didn't want to be hurt by the world, that I shut myself off from the world and I tried to just protect myself. And so I think going to like what I do today is like I've kind of done a complete 180, where instead of like shutting myself out from the world, where I think a lot of people are doing that with mental health, spirituality, anxiety, depression, all these kind of things, I try to be completely transparent and just allowing people to see that it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to let yourself be seen and know that you are worthy, and all the things that I advocate for. So that was a bit of a long answer.
Yeah, well, no, I mean it's a very telling answer, right? Because we have our physical life, we have what people see about us, and then we have what we're actually feeling
Mm,
on the inside. And that's so much of I think in our world what we try to encourage is people to just be authentic with their feelings. And isn't that such a reflection of the film as well, is that the physical and the mental and the emotional, sometimes get expressed fully and sometimes they don't. And P.T. Barnum and The Greatest Showman, gave an environment where it was okay to just be who you are, right? This is me
mm,
physically, and then emotionally. sing out through song or riding elephants around or, hanging from the trapeze artist, right? Like
Mm.
express yourself in these amazing ways. And I heard that you are quite the artist as well, that you have other talents and passions and outlets for your emotional well-being. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. How do you explore those areas?
Yeah, I mean, acting obviously was one of the biggest ones when I was younger. That allowed my creative expression to come out, and sort of just reveal, the authenticity of what was inside me and what I was feeling. But I dabble in, artwork. I like to paint. I like to draw. I also do, I guess, non-traditional art forms where I also like to do graphic designs, and one of those kind of projects or creative expressions is a clothing line, apparel line that I am designing, which goes along with my brand and my company, the Little Guy Collective. So it sort of my creative expression kind of comes out in like one very creative aspects, which is like the artistic expression of acting and artwork and drawing and all that stuff. But then it also comes out in the work ways where like I create projects and try to create movements and things that help me to express my creative freedom from like a pure mental aspect. And that's also one thing that I really love about like mental health is like it's not really seen as a creative expression or an artistic expression. But I think like talking about these subjects, it really shows like what's going on inside your mind. And I think creative expression is about just like letting people see how you see the world and how you see your perspectives and how that can create something really special. And then kind of just going back to Greatest Showman is that I think one of the things that was really special about like the role of Tom Thumb was that one, he there was the real person of who he was Charles Stratton, which is like his personal life, what people didn't see behind the scenes, and then there was Tom Thumb, which was his public image, the image that was created, or the image that P.T. Barnum helped build and create to show off his more confident side. And I think that's something that kind of really happened with me. Like I was going through a lot of things on the personal side where like I shut that down, but then also I had someone, and this is like more or less a real true story with Hugh Jackman. When I became, this actor, this role of Tom Thumb and Charles Stratton, Hugh Jackman put me in a film. Hugh Jackman made me, a actor, a movie star, whatever you want to say. But he like helped me show and build my confidence on the world stage. And so I think I that contrast, like it's really shows up between like my real life and the image that I build or I create, that has really now become truly who I am, because I really like cultivated that image where at first it was like a really fake facade, but like now I've actually stepped into that confidence of like who I am on this public world stage, to show that I really have built what was fake at first. And so I think that's really beautiful about the film, that it really like actually connects to like my real life rather than just a performance.
Yes, yes. And thank you for showing us that side of you. And Sam, I know it wasn't always so beautiful.
Mm. It was
That
very messy to begin with, I'll say that.
there were times, and you talked about your youth. In fact, you talked about the character that Hugh Jackman played earlier in his career, not being able to get hurt, and that was at a really vulnerable time in your life. In your, it's hard enough to be a teenager. It's hard enough to go into puberty and go all these, go through these experiences, and then to have um, different abilities in these sort of restrictions of what you think life should look like, what I should look like. I mean, can you talk about that? And can you talk about how you survived emotionally through that period of your life?
Yeah. So, like as you said, it's one thing to be a teenager. It's one thing to develop. It's one thing to go through all these things and not knowing who you are, what is your identity, and that's the whole process of transitioning from adolescence to teenager to young adulthood to full adulthood, as you want to say. But then it's another thing to have these other challenges where having different abilities, being a little person, and not fully transitioning through those processes. When I was growing up, I didn't go through the normal stages of development at the quote unquote right stages. And so that really hit me really, really hard when I was growing up, seeing a lot of my male friends going through that development stage and going through those changes, and then seeing them get into relationships and seeing them win the affections and be seen by women and all those kinds of things. It really made me question my self-worth, and it really made me question am I valuable as a human being? And I go into all of these things in the books that I'm writing, in the book that I'm writing, my autobiography. I go into all this in like extreme detail because I think it's very important to help other people see this. But going back before, transitioning into high school and going through all that, when I was younger, probably about 14, 15, so it's still around about the same time when I was going through that, um, I I didn't want to die, but I also questioned what was I living for. Um, and then I had, on the medical side of it, I had all these doctors telling me that my quality of life going forward may not be the best, and that I may not survive past 18. And hearing that when you're, already 14, 15 years old, which is only like 2, 3 years away, you're like, what's the point to all this? Why, for me, why, pointlessly go along with this whole experience only to possibly die in like 3 years. I'm like, I don't want to go through this heartache. I don't want to go through, um, back then, and unfortunately still today, I still have thoughts of self-doubt and that I am a burden. It's very hard to reprogram your mind when you, been challenged with these thoughts for such a long time, and I'm working through them still. I engaged in therapy, and I engaged in talking with people that help me to challenge my mindset and reprogramming. But thinking that way, you don't want to be a burden on family. You don't want to be a burden on loved ones. And so that's where I was in a very dark place in my teen years, and that led me to try and take myself out of this world. That led me to attempt suicide many, many times. And I I'm still working through that. Like, to say that I don't have those thoughts anymore. I mean, I don't ever have the thought of wanting to try it, because I know now I am innately valuable and worth being here. And I see that from talking with people like you. I see that from organizations that I work with. I see that from my incredible, amazing fans who support me. But I still have moments where I do question, my self worth, and I think that's just part of human nature. So yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.